Oh, welcome one and all to this terrific triumvirate that meets not quite every week, some weeks nowadays, but when we do.
Back weeks.
Yeah, it's just that little bit more special. Brittany Earton's come right off the air in California, is in the FanDuel, not TVG, FanDuel HQ in Los Angeles. Mark Tuberty in Brooklyn, the best dressed tonight. He's been working hard on his cocktails for a little bit later on. I just got in from choir practice, Truth, here in Teddington, Southwest London. And today we're going to be focusing not just on what the best drink is this evening, but the horse that hit every note last weekend and thrilled the global racing public, perhaps like no other in the last couple of decades. He is, of course, the brilliant Flightline, and his co-owner, Terry Finley, is going to be with us. Brittany, good evening.
Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you're coming from. Nick, you are already off to a Flightline type of performance right now. I mean, that was beautiful.
20 months ahead of us.
All the right notes after your choir performance. I mean, like, come on. It's as if you scripted it.
The key difference between me and Flightline is that I can set off at 1,000,000 miles an hour, but I will be wilting. I'll be wilting long before the quarter pole, and we'll finish up the track, whilst you and Mark just keep plowing on relentlessly past me.
Yeah, I don't think any of us could keep up with the pace that Flightline does in anything that we do. Maybe Mark, though, in his mixology. Maybe he's the Flightline of the trio.
I don't think so. I got to tell you, I found myself holding my breath watching that race, as I'm sure you guys did too. You were there in person, right, Brittany?
I was.
What was going through your mind? I'm sure we're going to talk about it a lot more later on, but to see that in person had to be pretty special.
So I was sitting in the box behind Richard Mandella. Richard Mandella had royalship in that race. I just interviewed him, and so I'm just kind of sticking there. In case he wins, that would be my interview. And there was a moment where it felt like the crowd got quiet because you knew that you were witnessing something spectacular. And everyone started, it was a moment where you were sitting there being, oh my God, oh my gosh. And then everyone's like, I need to capture this. I might never see it again.
The call of the race was fantastic too, and it reiterated that as you might not see this again, and it just was incredible. I'm sorry, Nick.
No, I was going to ask Britt, what have you done to upset the producer?
Which one?
Well, who said right, Britt? You Mark, the trainer of royal shit.
That's a fair question. I don't know. No, actually, well, Gabby did a lovely job. She was on Flightline all day. She did a fantastic job. I have a bum knee, and so I couldn't really walk over with any of the horses. So maybe that's why, or maybe I wasn't good enough for Flightline. Who knows?
Oh,
I'm hoping I get him back for the Classic.
There we go.
Terry Finley put in a good word.
Yes.
Hey, I wanted to ask you from your perspective, Britt. I've just been mesmerized by this. There's very few occasions nowadays because we're so lucky we get to go racing all around the world and see all these great horses, and you can never really quibble with what you've seen, and you occasionally miss the odd good one, and you think, yeah, whatever. I really had massive envy of anyone who was there on Saturday night, and it happens so rarely. Has it got any reach yet in the US? This performance? Has it gone beyond the sport yet or not?
Unfortunately, no. And I think that's the biggest difference, because there were a lot of comparisons to Cigar coming in off of a 16 race win streak and the pomp and circumstance around him running, and then the upset of Darren Go. Would we see something like that again? Would it be Richard Mandella pulling the upset? But the thing is, unfortunately, he didn't have that 16 race win streak underneath his belt. He had 4 wins. So the public, the broader public, I don't think has had the opportunity to really fall in love with him yet. The horse racing community, he is absolutely captivated. underrated. I do believe if he runs in the Breeders' Cup Classic, wins the Breeders' Cup Classic, and maybe runs after that, I don't know, we can talk to Terry, he will absolutely garner attention outside of the sport. He should have already, but from what I've seen, no, not quite yet. But I don't believe, that people will want to miss what I believe he's capable of doing, against some of the best in the world. And that is 1000% worthy of getting on an ESPN, Fox, etc. So not yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's picked up at some point in time.
Interesting. We ought to talk about what's happening this weekend and why we're here. We're here because I'll be off to Kentucky Downs for the first time. Now, you went last year.
I did.
And you had a great time.
I did. I flew into Nashville. I'm going to be honest. There is not much around there at all. So pack snacks,
I'm staying quite near Nashville. So.
Oh, that's good. Okay. I will say, I was with our lovely Meg from Breeders' Cup, and we found a great spot for dinner, and I'll share it with you. And then stayed in Nashville after. But the track in general is so unique. You'll love it because they always compare it to a European track. So when we went last year, we took around a golf cart and did a time-lapse video on the golf cart of the track and its undulations, the ups, the downs, the wide turns, the uphill run to the finish. So I would definitely suggest walking it because that's a cool experience, and you'll be able to give us a comparison.
Yeah. See, I come to America because I want to come to America. I get all the hills and dales in England.
Well, now you can get a little bit of hills of England in Kentucky.
But they're
even though you may not have as many bars or restaurants around there, but that's what this training has all been about, Nick. You can make the most of your mini bar with some mixology know-how.
Oh God, Mark, you're great.
Mark, you don't. Yeah, there's Britt. What do you reckon the chance of there being a mini bar in my hotel? Yep. Nice idea, though.
Eggs from the kitchen.
It is a nice idea.
Nice idea.
So what races? I'm going to ask you because I'm not on the show. What races are you covering?
Big turf race worth $500,000. Big turf sprint race worth the same. They're winning your ins for the turf and the turf sprint, and they're going to be quite important winning your ins as well, I think. Certainly the turf with Gufo and Arklow, that's going to set your standard for the the US, the home domestic horses, for the
Arklow, really,
for the Brits to aim at, and then just give you good yardsticks, aren't they?
Gufo for sure. I didn't know Arklow, to be honest. Didn't know Arklow was back and winning.
Well, he's there.
Where have I been?
He's there. And then the turf sprint, I think the European challenge for the turf sprint, if all the horses stay sound between now and then, is going to be a very good one at Keeneland this year. I don't know what's going to happen to Golden Pal. If he's back to his best, he'd obviously take a lot of beating. But
well, Wesley was going to run him in the Phoenix on the dirt at Keeneland. I thought that was interesting, but they called an audible and we'll move him back to the turf course to try and defend his title. But we just had a runner in Southern California win a win and you're in for the turf sprint. It was the Green Flash. Lieutenant Dan defended his He defended his title in that race for Steve Miotti and Nick Alexander. The Calbred is just a really cool story. He finished second last year. So, I mean, he's going to have to take his talents elsewhere to Kentucky, but he's a cool horse.
Would he get the extra half?
Oh, yeah, I think
as effectively.
Yeah, no problem.
So he'll probably end up being the home trained horse to beat, won't he?
I don't know what's on the east, but at least on the west for sure.
Yeah, I'd say so. Highfield Princess is the interesting one from here. She runs in the Flying 5 at the Curragh on Sunday, which is a win in your in. She's already won a win in your in. She's already won the Nunthorpe, and she won the Morris de Geest over 6.5. So she's got all the speed for 5, but she stays. So she'd be she ought to be the favorite in any country at the moment.
It's exciting. I mean, and then obviously a ton coming up overseas this weekend, right? Leopardstown and Curragh.
Yeah.
We have 5 win in your in races. So
yeah, we have. We've got the horse at the race I've just been talking about, the Flying 5 for the turf sprint. We've got the Moygles Stud, which is a win in your in for the Juvenile Fillies turf. Filly called Meditate by No Nay Never. will be the favorite for that, for Aidan O'Brien. And then the 3 races at Leopardstown Saturday, the Royal Bahrain Irish Champion Stakes. That'll have a significant bearing, I would have thought, on Breeders' Cup races with horses like Broom and La Petite Coco. But they'll all struggle to beat the 2 French horses, Fidani and Ernesto. And then there's the Champions Juvenile Stakes as well, which is a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Colts, and the Coolmore Matron Stakes, which is the win and you're in for the Filly and Mare Turf, and features Jane Chapel-Hyam, Saffron Beach running against Homeless Songs, who this week Dermot Wells said was likely to turn up in the Breeders' Cup. They could both come to the Breeders' Cup. So the European challenge for the Breeders' Cup is looking very, very deep at the moment.
Ah, I love hearing that. Jennifer Pinkerton Cook is watching, and she says it's too early for cocktails here, but hello.
Not here.
Never too early for cocktails. I don't have anything. I literally just got off air, so it's only water, but.
Solid. So speaking of overseas, Dorian Dickinson is watching from Frankfurt, Germany right now. So I told him earlier today, that is dedication. That is dedication to this show.
Mm-hmm. It is.
I don't know what time it is there, but.
Who knows? But I think it's time to get the show rolling. Nick?
So do I. So do I. Our special guest today is a man who this week has enjoyed being part of the greatest ownership story in US horse racing at the moment, the one to which we alluded extensively at the beginning of the program. He's the CEO and founder of West Point Thoroughbreds. They recently won their 1,000th win with Phantom Smoke on August 21st at Saratoga. They've got over $64 million in earnings, 16 Grade 1 wins, but everything they've done and everything they will do in the fullness of time may always be defined by their inclusion in the ownership of Flightline. Terry Finley, good afternoon.
Awesome to be with you, Nick, and Mark and Brittany. It's I'm okay with that. I've heard that before, that we're going to be defined, and like I'm okay. I'll accept it, right? Because he's a very special horse. I'll give a shout out to Dorian. I lived in Germany for 3 years in a place called Schweinfurt, Germany, which is about 2 hours south of Frankfurt. So I'm a big fan of Germany overall, and I love going to the races at Baden-Baden when I was I guess I was a second lieutenant in the mid 80s. So I love Germany. I really do.
Awesome.
I love it. And that just segues into, your story and your background. And I was so excited to have you on here as a guest because I genuinely don't know the story of how you got into horse racing. Okay, I'm just going to leave it to you. How did the love and when did the love begin?
Yeah. Well, I tell you, Brittany, my father was a school teacher, and I'm the youngest of 7 kids. And, at that point, probably in the late 70s, I started going to the racetrack with my father, and I just loved it. I'd go to parks. Well, at that time, it was Keystone. I don't know if you remember Keystone. It became Philadelphia Park, and now it's Parks. But I would go on the weekends, and I kind of worked my way in onto the backside. I'd go to the receiving barn, and I'd run horses that shipped in from New York. And I just started to get to know people, and I worked on the backside on the summers, and I just, like we all do, we have that feeling about the business and about the horses and, about the grandstand and the smells and everything else that we all love and cherish about the memories growing up. So that planted the seed. I went away to school. I spent 8 years in the military, and during the time I was about ready to get out of the military, I was trying to figure out exactly what to do with the next phase of my life. And I ended up going to the New Jersey State Fair at Garden State, and I got that smell, and I was around the racetrack, and I said, I have to find some way to get back into this great sport. And actually, my wife and I, we claimed a horse for $5,000 at Parks, and so that was the start. So that was in 1991.
Terry, did you ever envisage yourself as a lifer in the military or not, or was it always going to be just a part of your life?
I'm asked that question quite a bit, Nick. I really loved the soldiers, and I liked the military. I didn't like having a boss. And it's probably not a good place to be if you don't really take to the chain of command. But it was such an honor to wear the uniform of the U.S. And the Army. But I think there was at the 7 or 8 year mark, you're right at the inflection point, right? To stay another year or two, you pretty much should stay the full 20 because you have the ability to have a pension and all the medical and all the benefits that you get, as you should get if you serve 20 years in the military. But I was right there. I was right there. So I stepped out and I jumped into the military or into the civilian life. And, we just started full time. I started full time at the business in West Point Thoroughbreds. And I guess it would have been 1994. And we just started building, in particular, like around the Delaware Valley and in the Mid-Atlantic, at Monmouth and at Parks and all those places.
I mean, West Point, the moniker for the ownership group, West Point Thoroughbreds, but also an incredible academy that you graduated from. What was your time like at West Point, and why was it so important to bring that part of your life into racing?
Yep. I love the academy, and I have as they say with all the academies and with a lot of experiences in college, you build the bond with a group of people. And I have about 10 friends that we literally text 18 times a day, and I wouldn't give that up for anything. But the bonds that you endure, or that you develop with people, and you endure the process and the system that you have when you go through West Point. It's a great system. It's not for everybody. It really isn't. There are some parents I'll see at the races and they'll talk to me about their son or their daughter. And I know, I get a sense that particular person, a young person, wouldn't be a good fit, but for the right fit and for the right person, it's as good of an experience as you can get. And, I'm just incredibly proud of it.
I'm curious, if Nick lived here, could he have handled it? Just wondering.
He would have talked his way out of it, I think.
I'm going to pause here. I'm going to have a little drink of a.
Cheers, Terry.
I think he could. I think he could. I think he could have went to Sandhurst. But yes, I mean, look, it's
yeah. My brother-in-law has just completed. I don't know what did he do? 18, 19 years? No, nearly 20 years as an Air Corps officer, and he graduated from Sandhurst. And Sandhurst wasn't very far from where I grew up. It's not actually that far from Ascot, where I was born. And he always says whenever he drives past Sandhurst, which again is a beautiful building, he just gets that knot in his stomach.
I know what it is. Yes,
it's that unspeakable knot in the stomach that can never be untied when you are reminded of something from your youth that is a formative and often challenging experience, as I'd imagine it was, Terry. But of course, the ties that bind when you're there must have created all those great friendships since.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, talking about Sandhurst on that, Mick, that's the West Point of England. And of course, they say the reverse over there. But I used to love when the cadets from Sandhurst would come over. Obviously, they would send the creme de la creme over to West Point, and we'd have the competitions, but they were great. And the after parties and the ability to get to know all the cadets from over there was that was a lifelong memory that I'll have. But I did not know that it was going to be a career. We had a little partnership. I had a buddy, and we put a little bit of money in to claim a horse, and I just thought it'd be a cool side hobby to name our company West Point Thoroughbreds. Right. And then like a year and a half or two later, I looked at my wife, Debbie, and the two of us said, why don't we give this a try to try to make this a career? albeit one that at that point was a long shot. So, I didn't really see all this coming together, but the road and the journey has been incredible, as it is for all of us in the horse business. We all agree. I think that there's no better sport and there's no better industry and there's no better group of people than the ones that are in the horse business. And God, I think we're so lucky overall to be, to have access to the industry overall.
Terry, going back to West Point for just a second, these days when we think of the term GOAT, all the young people say greatest of all time, but GOAT had a different meaning in West Point, didn't it?
It did, Mark. So the GOAT is the very last person. So I like to say the number one guy or a cadet in our class was the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. He was the number one guy. And I like to say I was in the top 93%. But I say that I say that because the GOAT is the very last person. So you never plan to be the GOAT because it's very close. Because if you're one, beside the GOAT, then you don't graduate. So the GOAT is the very last person. And I guess for like 150 years, there's been a tradition on graduation day. They pass around a paper bag, and everybody puts at least $1. Some people put in more, and it ends up in the hands of the GOAT. So the GOAT gets to drive away with the same diploma that Mike Pompeo has. In addition, he has about $1,200 in all ones and fives and tens in a paper bag. So we're still, and every year it's the same way. Every year you'll see, right in the middle of the ceremony, the GOAT will walk up and the whole place will give him a standing ovation because everybody knows who the GOAT is.
Maybe that would have been Nick. School. Who knows?
I love it.
I'll take
it. Okay with the 1,200, right?
I'll take the 1,200 anytime. Terry, when was the point where you and Debbie turned to each other, if indeed that point ever came, and said, "Yeah, this is actually working quite well. We can probably do this now." Yeah,
it took a while, Nick. It took a while. Like when you're grinding out and you're claiming horses for 12.5 and for 16 non-2, we questioned it did. At that time we had 2 children, and so we didn't win. We won our first stake. Actually, I was talking to Jay Hovde. Julie Crone won our first stake in 1996 at the Meadowlands with a filly that was off the turf. She was a sprinter. We thought that the weather was, that it could come off the turf. We stuck her in. It scratched down to a 3-horse field, and Julie nursed her along, going a mile and the 16th on the dirt. It was a thing of beauty. So I'll always be thankful to Julie Crone for winning our first stake. Right, but then we didn't win our first graded stake until 2002. At Gulfstream, we won the Swale with Pat Day. So we didn't win our first grade 1 until 2007. So, when you start at the bottom and you're trying to get people, to put in 2,500 and like a couple thousand to claim horses, I would not have traded it for anything, because I think it taught me the business side. I got educated in the horse business overall, but also about the people. And I was able to see how, the spectrum of people that truly love our business and that will put their hard-earned money. And I think that's one of the things that I really treasure, is the fact that I've had access, and our team has had access to people who are so passionate, and all they want to do is get on the other side of the purple or the velvet rope, and that's what they want to do. And, you see people when they, for the first time, they go into the paddock at Del Mar or at Saratoga, and their eyes are just wide. And, there are a lot of times they bring up their parents and they talk about, going to the races with their parents. and they talk about, I sure wish my father could see me in the paddock at Saratoga. You could imagine, obviously winning big races and to win every race is cool, right? But when you have somebody with that kind of emotion, and they say that to you, and you have up to then you've had a part to play to get them into the paddock. It really captivates your heart and your soul.
I can tell, because you've mentioned it many a times, that it's really the people along with these horses that make it all worthwhile for you. Is that what transformed West Point into you and your wife and some buddies into what it is today, really exposing new people to the sport and growing their love of it?
Yes, I would say unequivocally, Brittany. The game has changed, right? We all know that, right? We don't have to talk about, back in the 60s and the 70s, it was a small group of extremely wealthy people that owned all the horses, or the vast majority of them. So we know that right, that's been tripped on its head, and the whole thing is flipped 180 degrees. And I think it's great. I think it was a blessing in disguise for Cot Campbell to have started this process and to have started partnerships in the late 60s and the 70s. And I tell people, I can only imagine what it was like at Saratoga to be walking around like Cot Campbell did, trying to drum up business, and to have people look down their nose at you. This guy, an advertising guy from Atlanta, trying to encroach on our industry. And I will tell you, I think our industry owes a debt of gratitude, I think, like no other, to Cot Campbell and the other early syndicators, right? Because I think we all know, our business would be in a pretty good hurt at this point without partnerships.
Yeah.
And Terry, how many of your syndicate members have been with you since the word go? I mean, who have there been? Some that have been with you right the way since 95, 96?
There are a couple. There are a couple, Nick. But I think it goes without saying that the business is expensive, right? Not for the faint of heart, and it's grueling. And I think there's a weariness that comes with buying horses that don't work out. We all know very few of them are what we hope them to be, and so I understand, like, it's tough to stay and to not weaken in the business, right? But we do have some, and they're very special people to me. I can assure you that we have some teachers, and they're special because my father was a teacher. But there are people that supported us at a point when we didn't really, or I'd say we weren't in a position to have earned that support. They bet to come, and I'll be grateful, forever to that group of people who, saw like a young guy in the military that was like, had a dream.
Well, that just gave me chills, because you're always dreaming.
Yeah.
And what would you tell to yourself, the young kid that went to Parks with his dad, that you would win the Kentucky Derby one day?
Only in America. Only in America. I think about what you said to Bill, on a Saturday, Brittany, in the winter circuit. Said, where is that coming from? And I think, I just think all of us, right? We have so much to be thankful for, for this business, that when you stop and you think about it, it really moves the soul. So that's my answer.
I couldn't have said it better. And I mean, you've got me tearing up here, because I don't know if enough people see the beauty of this sport and the passion that people have behind it, from the owners to the trainers to the jockeys to the men and women that work on the backside. And it's a beautiful thing. And that's why I was so struck by Bill's emotion on Saturday, by your emotion right now, because you both have reached pinnacles of the sport, yet you still feel and appreciate each and every moment of it. Terry, all I can say is thank you.
Yeah. So they call me the John Boehner. I don't know if you remember, Nick, if you remember John Boehner, but he was the Speaker of the House, and he would cry at the drop of a dime. And I've had past performances where, you know, that's been me too. And so I said to Bill afterwards, I've never seen Bill choked up like that, but you know, I think he said it best. I mean, like, you never expect a horse to do this and to do what Flightline did on Saturday. But I was joking with him. I said, if only I could get a bet in to bet a future that we'd be in the winner's circle after grade one, and the video would show Bill Farish crying and Terry Finley not. I'd love to take that bet. I'd love to book that bet. But that was a special moment to see Bill, you know, in that position, because, you know, he's given so much to the industry overall. You can't imagine all the different things that he puts his time and his effort, his time, talent, and treasure into the business. And you know, we're the same age, so we've kind of grown up in the business, and that was very special for me to be standing beside Bill Farish after a huge win like that in the Pacific Classic.
There is something, and I don't know why, and you might well be able to articulate it better than me, but there is something about a performance of that caliber, and a performance so swashbuckling as the one we saw on Saturday in the United States, that has a certain theatricality about it that I'm not sure you necessarily get from racing anywhere in the world. I don't know why. I don't know what. I don't know whether it's just something that triggers inside me. I don't know whether it's the reaction that I've just seen from you. Maybe it's because we've all been brought up watching grainy, early Technicolor film of Secretariat. I don't know what it is. But when you described what you just described, when Jane Lyon described what she felt as Flightline, as Trevor Denman put it, widened, he used the Chick Anderson word, didn't he, on the back there. It had the capacity to elicit something in me that very little else in the sport can do. And maybe when you put it like that, only in America, maybe you're right.
Yeah. Well, I said that not as a slight to the rest of the world. I really didn't.
Right.
And you know that. I say it because it is when the industry, like only in this industry, I guess I would say, like across the world, like can people they can put their money up. And I know we paid a lot of money for Flightline. We paid $1 million for them, but there are other people that put a small fraction of that and their dreams come true. And, in the sporting world, it really is. You look at big time owners. Now, some of them, they built their wealth and they started with a pickup truck, but we see it more than any other sport, I believe. We see when dreams come true without the commensurate investment. Mm-hmm. The dreams are the same size, but oftentimes the investment is a lot smaller than you would think. And
yeah,
I think that's what we all love. And it has to be like that. It has to be like that. And it can't change, because if it does change, all the rich people would dominate. And we know that's the last thing that we want.
You Terry, have got an enterprise to sustain, and this could sustain this enterprise for quite a long time. You've got this juxtaposition of being involved in a very valuable commodity with a sense that the horse racing's got to seize the moment, and horses like this don't come along very often. Given the fact that the sport is not as robust as it was in 1973, to what extent do you, as a part of Flightline, feel that responsibility?
We do, and it runs through the veins of all of us. It truly does. And you know, I think John Sadler, as our leader and as the steward of the career of Flightline, I think that's very, very much at the forefront of his mind. So we have a gift, like a gift from God, that, you know, so far has been very, very good, and the star has shined, you know, very, very bright. So I think what you're leaning to is what happens in 2023.
It was very eloquent.
Can I read between the lines, Nick? And look, I know Costa, who is really our leader. You know, he owns the biggest equity stake, and he's the de facto leader, but he's also a great guy. And you know, he's only been, as he said today, he's only been in the business 11 or 12 years, and he is, I say lucky, but we all know that, especially in business, you make your own luck. And he's I think the leader in the world in the great business, and he's in several other things, but he's in horse racing. He's already been the owner of the year. He's already won an Eclipse Award. You know, he's won the Pack Classic, 4 out of the last 5 years. Like, when we go to the sales and we're looking to put these kind of deals together, I'm looking for partners like Costa and a Stephanie and Pete and his wife, because like there's something to, I get the message every time I turn on Del Mar, I see them in the winner's circle. So like, it's all about winning in the horse business. So anyway, I know he said he races and he wants this horse to do what he was born to do. And I'd like to think we are right behind him. We're very supportive of that. Now, I know when I look at spreadsheets, I don't come to that same conclusion, right?
Of course.
When you come to spreadsheets, there's one conclusion, and there's one course of action, is after the Breeders' Cup, to put him on a van and to send him over to Lane's End, where he's going to stand. And so that dichotomy, I think, is weighing on all of us. But if we can, I'm telling you, we would love to see him in 2023 in the spots. Like, he's not going to run 10 times, but I think we can all agree that John Sadler's probably mapped out that campaign for 2023. If in fact he gets the call, and we all say, John, you're going to be the steward of this gift from God for another year.
Yeah, I mean, and that's not to pile any more pressure on him either. What do you think? Say it's 5. Say it's 5 races in 2023, Terry, and you think John Sadler's already conceived of that in his mind, and frankly, he would not be human if he hadn't.
Right.
Because he, touching every bit of wood that I've got at my disposal, is starting to just get a little sounder, more robust. He's growing up. He's physically getting into his prime. What do you think he could realistically manage next year?
Well, the first kind of the Pegasus would certainly be on the docket. A trip to the Middle East, whether that's in the offering, but certainly that's the we'd love to run or to win the Met Mile again. You know, he really had a cool trip to New York. Seemed to love that the surface at Big Sandy at Belmont, right? And I do think we'd love to come to Saratoga, and we take a look at the Whitney. Of course, the people on the West Coast would love to see him come back to the Pacific Classic again. And then, you know, maybe a spot in early October, and then the Breeders' Cup, which is back at Del Mar.
Yeah.
That would kind of be the, you know, the structure of that campaign.
Santa Anita next
Yes,
year.
year.
When I'm saying, I said Del Mar, I meant Santa Anita. Obviously, he loves both of those courses and those surfaces. So I think would be what John would be thinking as our steward, and as the person with the plan for Flightline.
I'm just getting onto my travel agent to see if all of those dates are
we
available.
can dream, we can hope, right? I think that's all any of us ever really want in this industry. With the price tag comes expectations. With every time he works out comes expectations. With every time he runs comes expectations. How are you and the rest of the group able to manage those? Do you even with him?
We do, because you really don't have a choice, right? If you don't, you're just going to be a nervous wreck all day. So I pretty much think the entirety of the group has assumed an outlook that we are going to just enjoy the ride. And I said to somebody, I thought I smiled a lot. I really did. I thought it was kind of I thought it was a pretty happy person before, and I smiled, but I smile now more than ever. I really do. Because, you know, I think about the other people that I've known that have had really, really top class horses, and there's an air about them as well as the horse. So it's a match made in heaven, you know, for a lot of the horses, not all of them, but you know, when it gels, and the partnership's a great partnership. Like I tell people, like, these partnerships that are coming together of end users, they might seem to be, you know, good and everything's peaches and cream, but you know, a partnership's got to work. And I think this partnership, everybody knows. Like, I'll give you an example. There are a couple individual owners, and there are two partnerships. Woodford and West Point are partnerships with partners. Mm-hmm. So you have Sienna Farm, the Manganeros, they're by themselves, and you have Jane, Costa, and Stephanie and Horonis Racing. They're by themselves. So one of the things that I know is an issue is the number of people that are in the paddock and in the winner's circle. And you know, we did a much better job at Del Mar than we did at the Met Mile, but that you know, that's something that they know that I'm cognizant of, and I'm sensitive, because I want to be a good partner, and our people want to be good partners. And every single partner in this colt, I think we've all committed to being good partners. And you know, that's not the case every time, but I think people are starting to learn that the more this is being done at the sales, you know, the more you have to be and acknowledge the fact that you know, you're not doing it by yourself. And you know, so there's a different dynamic, but it's fine if you deal with it the right way.
I know we're going to get to, sorry, Nick, Mark, in just a bit for a drink, but I just want to say from our perspective, from a broadcaster's standpoint and media, this group of people surrounding the best horse in America. Can I say world? Is he better than Bait? I'm going to say world because I'm biased. You've been so generous with your time. And I think that that's what the public needs is a group of owners that are willing to share this incredible horse, and the barn willing to share their time. So I just, from a media standpoint, I can't thank you guys enough. And it does seem like the perfect partnership for a horse like that. I mean, Nick, do you agree?
I was going to say a variation on the theme, really, which is that so often you get really good racehorses and they don't get the owners they deserve, or you see, or Brittany and I are trying to get blood out of a particular stone, and we're thinking, oh my god, if only this horse was owned by somebody who it looked like they were enjoying themselves. Never mind could actually allow the public such access to the horse. And even me, 6,000 miles away, has this week been able to speak to Stephanie Ronis, Jane Lyon, and you, Terry, and everyone just has not only a great enthusiasm for the horse, but for the sport as a whole, and it is enjoying each other's enjoyment of the horse, and everyone's coming at it from a slightly different perspective, and steeped in many years of trying to find and or produce the perfect racehorse. And of course, if that underpins your passion for it, then you can't go too far wrong. And for us, that's a gift. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. You know, there are a lot of trainers that talk to me about what can I do to get more horses, and what can I do to improve my lot. And certainly the horsemanship is there, but in today's world, you can't look down at the other end of the shed row and to see owners or prospective owners coming and walk the other way like they did for many years. Right? It's a different world, and for the most part, the trainers that do that are the ones that don't have any horses, or that are way down. And it's a big deal with people. They want to, this is a social game, and they want the relationships, and they want the relation. And of course, that doesn't mean that you're going out to dinner with your trainer for 2 or 3 days a week, but the social aspect of it and the engagement side, I think, is very important. And I see more and more trainers getting it. I really do.
I think that's a great point. That's not often talked about. What we haven't spoken a ton about is what you're making tonight, Mark.
Oh, well, this past week, I actually got a little time off. It's been a very busy schedule, but I managed to get Labor Day off. Thank you. So I was a complete bum the whole day. We just watched movies. And one movie that I watched that I have not seen, I don't know how this is the case, but was The Perfect Storm. Fantastic movie made back in 2000, starring George Clooney and Mark Wahlberg. And it really sheds light on how awesome and terrifying Mother Nature can be. So fishermen, such as the ones that were shown in that movie, and sailors have seen this throughout history, right? They've seen calm waters turn tumultuous and perilous in just a moment. So, I've actually mentioned this in the past, but sailors, I think, unexpectedly or unknowingly helped contribute a lot to cocktail culture. And that's mostly because of the fact that they were combining, probably out of necessity, the few resources that they had on their vessels, often in an attempt to ward off ailments of the day. So let's take a look at what those rations would have been for them. Things like limes, right? Lime juice was essential for them to have on board so they could ward off scurvy. Scurvy was a really nasty condition, as you guys know, that was a result of a severe lack of vitamin C. So that would happen oftentimes on these long maritime voyages. So yeah, very nasty stuff. Your expression says it all, Brittany. So they wanted to avoid that. So they had some type of limes, either fresh lime juice, or in the late 19th century, Lachlan Rose, a Scottish entrepreneur, developed Rose's lime juice, which was essentially the world's first fruit preservative. And that was a way of preserving the lime juice on these long voyages. So they would also have spirits, right? They would have things like gin, especially the English colonizers. You would have rum, especially once you got to the Caribbean.
All I'm thinking of is Jack Sparrow asking for more rum.
Yes, yeah, but probably pretty on point. Actually very appropriate for today's cocktail. But so why would they have the spirits? Well, For one reason, yes, it did help to kind of calm the temperaments, at least moderately, of the sailors, especially under some pretty less than optimal conditions. But also keep in mind that things like beer, wine, and spirits were actually considered safer to drink than water in many situations back in that time, because of the fact that we didn't understand microorganisms and bacteria yet. So if water was sitting for an extended period of time, you could drink that and get sick, and you didn't know why that was happening. But when you had wine or beer, sometimes you wouldn't feel that way. So obviously we know the negative effects now, but that was another reason why they might have that on board. Then we had things like tonics. So don't think of Canada Dry yet, but the original tonics were essentially medicine. Infusions with tinctures of like herbal remedies that were used to treat any number of maladies. Those tonics that had quinine from the cinchona bark found in Peru and Venezuela were used specifically to treat malaria. So this is another great thing to have on board your ships. And then, of course, while they found their way through the Caribbean, picking up spices, things like sugarcane. So you kind of see that we developed the building blocks of a lot of classic cocktails right on a vessel. Gin and lime juice, you've got your classic gimlet. Rum, lime juice, sugar, you have a daiquiri, and gin and tonic. I don't need to say anymore. But another cocktail that perhaps has its roots back in maritime history would be the Dark and Stormy. So the Dark and Stormy, tying it back to the perfect storm here, traditionally called for a dark rum, ginger beer, and a little squeeze of lime. So we don't know exactly who created this cocktail, but we do know on what island it was created, which was Bermuda. And we know which rum company lays claim to its creation, which is Gosling's Black Seal Rum. They actually successfully issued a trademark in 1991 saying that any product that says Dark and Stormy on it has to use Gosling's. So that's how strong their claim is. So the traditional Dark and Stormy, again, just a little dark rum, ginger beer, and lime. If you want to get a little extra fancy, you can float the dark rum on top, and that creates the illusion of a little storm cloud. But I actually could not find Gosling's in my area, which is nuts. So I've got the Kraken Dark Rum. I know this is a little sacrilegious, but luckily, yeah, it is a cute bottle. Yeah. It's like a little squid kind of.
Terry, do you see? Mark just needs his own show. I mean, the amount of information that he has up in his brain is amazing.
I'm very impressed. I really am. This is kind of the next phase for the shows that I've seen. So well done, Mark. Really.
Thank you so much, Terry. Thank you. I joke all the time that basically I'm just a big geek. So this is my little opportunity to kind of share that geekiness. But so we're going to go ahead and make this cocktail. And lucky for me that I didn't name this version of the Dark and Stormy a Dark and Stormy, because now Gosling's can't come after me. We are going to be making the perfect storm. So I do have my split screen back this week. Yes, we are going to start with a little fresh lime juice because scurvy is not as much of a threat right now, especially in Bushwick here in Brooklyn. But we want our lime juice for acidity. So we're going to do 3/4 of an ounce freshly squeezed lime juice into our cocktail shaker. And now the next thing might sound intimidating, but it's actually very easy. We're going to do a ginger syrup. So instead of doing ginger beer, we're going to do ginger syrup and club soda later on. The easiest way to do ginger syrup is to peel some ginger. And I want to show you a quick trick. I know peeling ginger seems like such a tedious thing to do, especially if you have like a Y-shaped peeler. Let me show you this. Just use a spoon. Watch this.
Honestly, I've tried. It's still not that easy.
It's not. takes a little doing. I guess I've peeled ginger more than some people just because of the cocktail stuff. But that's the easier way and safer way of peeling ginger. So peel your ginger, rough chop it, and then just put it in a blender with some water and strain that mixture. So essentially now you have a ginger juice, and you're going to just combine that with an equal amount of sugar in a saucepan. So pretend like your ginger water is regular water and make a simple syrup with it. And what you're going to get is a really, really vibrant, spicy homemade ginger syrup. Okay, so we're going to take 3/4 of an ounce of that and combine that with our lime juice. It has a really nice spiciness to it, very, very fragrant as well. And this is going to be a little bit more fresh than just doing the ginger beer. That's cool if you don't have too much time. But here we're going to try to make an elevated version. So to that point, we're going to do 2 different types of rum. I am going to do that dark rum as a nice float on top, but I'm also going to use a little Jamaican rum. So I'm going to do 2 ounces of Jamaican rum. What I love about that specific type of rum is that it typically uses pot distillation. We'll get into that another day, but you get these heavy esters from that particular type of distillation, a really full body and kind of a slight funk, but a good funk when it comes to rum. Good funk could be a good horse name. We haven't done that for a while.
That is a new descriptor for you, Mark.
Good funk.
I've never heard.
Me neither.
You've never used the word funk in any cocktail that you've made in 2.5 years.
Never even said, this is funky. No, never.
Funky, no. I'm trying to keep it fresh. Funky, fresh. All right. Now, so before we shake up our cocktail, we're going to put a little club soda into the bottom of a highball glass. So you can just, shake the cocktail, pour it into the glass, and then top it with club soda. But even then, you would have to use a spoon to mix it. So we might as well just put it in the bottom, and then when we strain the cocktail on top, it'll mix itself. So that's kind of a little hack there. So about 2 ounces of club soda. We're not going to get too scientific with that, but we are going to shake our cocktail with ice. So let me grab some ice here.
Oh, Nick, you should start reading off all of the West Point Thoroughbred victories.
Yeah, well, I was trying to find the resource to do it, but there it just doesn't. It seems to be one that can kind of can cope with them all because there are so many. Maybe as Mark's mixing, Terry can tell us how big a deal it was for West Point to get the 1,000th winner.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty good until I went up to the box, Nick. I sat next to Steve Asmussen. So Steve and I have been friends for a long time. He said, "You know how many I have?" So
hey, that's not fair.
That's not fair.
No, it's not. But man, he was one of the first people to congratulate me and to congratulate us. So it was really cool, and it kind of hit me like a couple days after. That's a lot of wins, and you have to do them one by one, right? There's no compounding interest. You got one by one. So I thought it was a good day, and there were a lot of cocktails that were served after the race at the Jim Dandy bar. That's for sure.
I'm sure.
So we've strained our cocktail here. I just want to show you guys, we're going to layer some dark rum on top. So remember, anytime you layer, you're going to put the spoon backside up here at the top of the glass, and then gently pour your rum on top. You're going to see we have a really nice dark cloud that is now floating on top here.
If I tried to do that, it just wouldn't do that.
No, it would go all the way down.
Have you tried to do? I've always used to try and do it with cream on the top of coffee for a bit of fun to see if it worked, and it never worked.
That's beautiful.
Thank you. So now we're going to just add a nice lime garnish here and a piece of candied ginger.
Oh, lovely.
Beautiful.
To be honest, though, last week's drink was hands down the most beautiful drink you've ever made.
Oh, thank you. I mean, that one, just the purple color. I don't know what's going on here. It's getting kind of dark.
Windy. Are you in a perfect storm?
I don't know what's going on, but it's definitely getting darker. Do you guys? Can you see this?
What's he doing? Oh, look at that!
Little dark and stormy here. Had to make it somewhat theatrical. But cheers, guys! I hope you like our perfect storm cocktail. Hopefully the weather's a lot better in California and where everyone else is. But cheers!
You kill me. You really
cool stuff.
You really do.
You know, Mark. The budget on this show doesn't deserve much. It
doesn't.
You know,
there's supposed to be some thunder at one point here. I just bought this off of iTunes. There you go. Got a little thunder.
Oh man!
Honestly, it's like this is like running Flightline in a non-winners are won at Parks.
I forgot the lightning.
Oh my! Stop it! I can't. What are you guys supposed to do? How are you supposed to go up from there, Mark? I mean, the level of production just on your end and nobody else's.
I do the best that I can with this one software program, but I'll keep going to the drawing board every week for you guys. But I was concerned going into this demo, honestly, because Terry, you have been so amazing and such an inspiration. So having you on this show, I was scared to get to the cocktail portion because just listening to you talk for 30 minutes has just been a pleasure, been a joy.
Absolutely. Right back at you, Mark. Really cool.
Thank you.
I did love that. I remember watching that movie for the first time. I've always been a George Clooney fan, and I love the bar scenes. Weren't they great? The bar scenes when they were waiting to go out into the ocean, and that song that I still think about instantaneous. It takes me back to the bar
Yeah. And just that feeling, because everybody knows one another, which also makes it more heartbreaking. I don't want to ruin anything for anyone, but but it's a very well done movie. You haven't seen it?
No.
All right, I will say no more. Make sure you have a Dark and Stormy while you watch it.
It's on the bucket list. Got it.
You'll love it. You'll love it, Brittany.
Done and done. Mark, thank you. That was awesome. I feel like we could talk to Terry for another few hours, but that would be rude of us, wouldn't it, Nick?
Well, the material is a bottomless pit, really, and I feel like we're only scratching the surface. So fingers crossed, Terry, we can do this again.
Absolutely.
At the end of the year, beginning of 23, after he's been to Dubai or Saudi or wherever it is, Met Mile,
Pacific Classic.
Pacific Classic. We're getting greedy now. Something else, and then a Breeders' Cup Classic. Then that's it. Then that's fine. Then we're all going to get a mare, and then we'll send it to him, and then it's fine.
Yeah. So I would like to throw a question back to you, Nick, because I've had a couple of people ask me about the outlook of obviously the Baid and the Flightline, and how the race on Saturday has impacted. So what's your summary of the way it's impacted the European, racing industry and society over there? You
can split racing fans into sort of three categories as regards the way they look at international racing in this country. Some people just don't. If it happens beyond these shores, it's the same in the States, I guess. If it happens beyond these shores, it doesn't exist. That's a sort of a fairly significant portion of people. And then there's people who think, well, if it happens somewhere else, then it's not real, particularly if it's on a different surface. So it doesn't count. There's been a lot of trash talking of dirt racing over the last couple of decades that's probably pulled it down and sort of reputationally here. You know me well enough to know that that's not the way I subscribe to it, because my whole deal is about making the world smaller. And I've had on-air arguments with people saying how much I enjoy the racing in the United States. I think the whole deal that Baid would never run on Flightline surface and Flightline could never run on Baid surface. I think when horses are that good, and I think we're talking about two horses who are, certainly in Flightline's case, we're talking about the best horse probably in a generation, or at least half a generation. And in Baid's case, we're talking about a horse who could realistically be talked of as up in the top, certainly in the top 5 horses since the war in Europe. I think when you're talking about horses of that caliber, and they've coincided in the same year, their versatility is probably a lot greater than people give it credit for. I've got absolutely no doubt that Flightline could win Grade 1 races on turf if somebody wanted to run him on turf. I don't see any reason why he couldn't, and I don't really see any reason why Baid wouldn't give a good account of himself on the dirt. So I don't see them as far apart as other people do, especially if you dig a little bit into the pedigrees. There's enough North American influence in European pedigrees still, and there's enough European influence in the pedigree of Flightline. Roberto and Nijinsky both appear in Flightline's pedigree 4 generations back, so it's not ridiculous. But of course, they are very unlikely to meet.
They won't.
They won't. So,
but said match race between Flightline and Baid at ASCA in 2024, and I said, well, that doesn't seem fair.
Baid is going to be. That's it. Baid retires after his next run or whatever. So that's it. Where he's done.
Yeah.
He's out. That's that. He's done what he's done. This idea of I do sort of think, funnily enough, that people will say, "Oh, you can never compare them," but I do sort of think that these next races will go some way to answering that question in some people's minds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they should.
If Baid turns up and goes to the Arc and wins at 1.5 miles and wins pulling a cart and is even better over distance. Yeah, and again, there's another parallel. I'm rambling, but there's another parallel because you've run 4 going into the Pacific Classic and everyone's like, well, is he going to be as good over beyond? Is he going to be as good stretching out, even though he's by Tappet from a fairly stout dam line? And same with Baid. He's a full brother to 1.5 mile winner, and he's been running all these Group 1s at a mile. And they're all, he's really fast. He's running these really fast fractions. He can do sub 11 furlong, second furlongs. Oh, is he really going to be as good? Do you know what? Both horses are better over further, and that they could stretch their speed over so far that they became even more potent and devastating. And I've got no doubt in my mind that Flightline could run 1.5 miles if you wanted him to, and he'd probably just win by 30 rather than 20.
Yeah, they're 2 very special horses. They really are.
That they are, and we can embrace them both, right?
Sure,
definitely.
Sure. I think that's the key. Is there doesn't always have to be one. There can be 2 that are just our superstars. That's kind of how I've resigned myself to. It's okay. It's all right. They're both superlative horses. So,
especially on their surface, right?
Yes.
And I wonder if certainly when Baid stepped up in distance to win the Juddmonte International, you got I was there at Ascot when I've been at every single one of his victories apart from when he broke his maiden at Leicester, and it was the first time when he won at York. Same as when Frankel stepped up to 1.25 miles and really put on the style and opened out, that you got that kind of visceral reaction from the crowd. The track lends itself to it, but you got that. The first time. Prior to that, you'd had, this horse is really good. We're appreciating a really good horse. And then you got something a bit more than that. It touched people It touched people inside. And I think that's probably the same as Del Mar the other day. I think, you go to New York. Oh, what a brilliant horse this is. When you were running in the Boxing Day last year, wasn't it? When you ran in the Malibu, was it New Year's Eve? I can't remember. And everyone's like,
Boxing Day.
This is a special horse. It's very good, very good, very good. But it's only when you take it to the next gear, you take it to the next level, you go up in distance, you do what you did at the week. Both horses are at a similar stage, I think, in that respect.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
Terry, great stuff from you. We can't thank you enough for spending so much time with us, for sharing this incredible horse with us, for looking back on your career and how you got started. And thank you for your service, above all else. Thank you for that. This has really been such a joy to have you on, and I can't wait to have you join us again and many more exciting Flightline runs to come.
Yes. Absolutely. Keep up the great work, you guys. Appreciate the time.
And Terry,
thank you.
That other thing before you go, what I love is when you get to an airport in the United States and they say members of the military, those with young children ready to board the plane now. I'm hoping it'll be members of the military, those who need assistance, young children, and any owners of Flightline. Please come to
right here.
Come to the front now.
You talked about at the beginning of the show, like this will give us a little bit of a hall pass in the future. I think he probably gives us on the pro golf tour, right? If you win a tournament, you have a Masters exemption. So he probably gives us, I don't know, a year or 2 of an exemption of the if we go on a bad streak, we can always think back to Flightline. But I think overall, the takeaway is he's a very impactful horse in any number of ways. So,
Very true. Great way to end. Terry, thank you so much. Terry Finley, CEO of West Point Thoroughbreds, part owner of Flightline. Best of luck wherever he runs next, which I know you haven't relayed yet, or if that'll be the Breeders' Cup Classic. But regardless, amazing, amazing run in the TVG Pacific Classic. Enjoy the rest of your, whatever time it is now, Wednesday at 4:10 or something. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Night, Terry.
Thank you, Terry.
That was great. I wanted to relay something because I thought it was just really interesting. Nick Feldman saying, it feels to me that everyone wants to live in the generation of their best life. And when sports events happen outside of that span, they typically talk down to the event because it potentially ruins their reality of the event they witness in their generation. I found that a little bit interesting. So do we think we have people that lived in Secretariat's generation that are looking at Flightline and don't want to fully embrace Flightline because they don't want to forget Secretariat, or do they embrace it because of what they witnessed? It's an interesting concept.
From what I've read, I think there's more people that are embracing it because they witnessed it. You know, like talking to Jay Pridman the other day about it, and he's like, I'm not ashamed to say that that's what went through my head when he opened up. I think he's getting a generous response, even from the crusties. The only thing that did strike me the other day was, and I did that, you know, we were talking about, I was researching that Secretariat. I mean, like you lot know way more about Secretariat than I do, but I was doing some research for a piece I was writing for the Racing Post here. And I just hadn't taken full stock of the fact that he ran 21 times in just over 2 years. And
that's the difference generationally. We're not going to see that from Flightline. We won't. It's just the breeding shed is too profitable for the horses to turn down. Terry was very candid about that. The spreadsheet says one thing, our hearts say another. But that's what makes, you know, those horses back then throwbacks. And when you see them now, that's why we call them that, right? So, hey, I've never witnessed a better performance in my 35 years. No. You know, you have people that have witnessed the great Secretariat saying that, you know, the look that Flavian did over his shoulder was very Ron Turcotte-like, and opening up with every stride. It's a very cool time to be a horse racing fan. That's all I'll say.
It is. And it really struck me because 2003, pretty sure it was 2003 when Candy Ride won the Pacific Classic. Was it the 3 or 4?
I think 4. I mean, off the top of my head. No.
Whatever it was, I was hosting the American Race 3. Yeah, that's right. So I was hosting the American Racing Show here, the all-night, you know, watched by probably not that many people, very late. And I just remember this South American bred sensation completely demolishing Medaglia d'Oro, who went off, I don't know, 2-5 or something, or 3-5. And it was just phenomenally impressive. And he broke the track record. And I always thought he was one of the most underappreciated horses of the modern era, really, because he sort of flashed across the skyline like a comet, and then was gone quite quickly. But it obviously ended up becoming a very good stallion. And the fact that Flightline would have allied a track record if Flavian hadn't eased him down to and it was that track record as well,
like a walk
to the distance, was just that really kind of left quite a notable impact on me. It's got it every way you look at it, that performance, hasn't it? It's got the depth of opposition because you got a World Cup winner in second. It's got the distance of ground. It's got the time. It's got the, you know, it's got the fact that he's progressed because he's gone up in distance. It's got everything.
Mm-hmm. No, it does. This show had everything. Mark, thank you for the Dark and Stormy, the perfect storm.
You know, I was
basically just a Dark and Stormy.
I feel embarrassed and fraudulent and unworthy on an increasing basis as the weeks slide by on this show, because Mark not only dresses best, he is prepared the best. He has the best questions. He has the
not at all.
He has the best drinks. He has the best cameras. I mean,
No, I'm just trying to keep up with you guys.
He's the
But I
goat.
appreciate it. Thank you. No.
yeah,
but
so am I.
episodes like this, I mean, I always have a good time, but when I can bring out the fun graphics, makes it that much more fun to get into. But this was an incredible show. I mean, it absolutely was.
A lot of fun. Nick, have so much fun at Kentucky Downs. When do you fly? Tomorrow?
Yeah. The next show, Brittany, and it feels like this has been quite a poetic show in many respects. It's been a show that's touched people's hearts. Next time we'll be talking about racing from Aqueduct.
Which also
we like contrast.
Next show's on September 28th. I'm confused though. I thought we were covering the champagne and the frisette from Aqueduct, but I'm being told it's the Miss Grillo and the champagne.
Yeah. Well,
I would have thought we would have had the 2 grade ones.
Of all of that, all that is true, and for all it's not a win and you're in, we ought to make mention of the fact that weekend, and we will be able to talk about it on Cocktails and Conversation, if nowhere else, will also be whatever the damn race is called now, because they keep changing the race title around. What's it called now?
Awesome Again.
No, yes, but no, that's not what I meant. It's the thing that used to be at Saratoga is now at Belmont, but is in fact at Aqueduct.
The Woodward with Life is Good. No, that's not in our show either.
No, but we can talk about it on this show.
I love that sound.
We can talk about it on this show.
Yeah,
this show, fine.
And
what I love is this is the first time we've done this show where you've got that kind of drop the dead donkey newsroom feel behind you, with people occasionally shuffling across the back of screen, completely oblivious to the fact that they're being broadcast to literally tens of people.
I should go out into the newsroom. No, there aren't too many people out there. But that'll be fun. Looking forward to it. There's a lot happening that weekend. Of course, what I was getting to was at Santa Anita. It's like their Super Saturday, the Awesome Again. Will we see, I don't know, will we see Flightline back? I kind of feel like they train him up to the Breeders' Cup Classic. But regardless, it's a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup Classic. It's the last win and you're in.
Why would you, a Southern Californian, and me, at that point in the year, short on a bit of vitamin D, why would we want to be in Southern California when we could be debuting at Aqueduct? Huh?
Because we've never been to the Big A. Yeah, exactly. Why would we want to be at Santa Anita that Saturday?
I've got 6 days in New York to just enjoy the city.
All right, our producer's telling us it's time to go.
We're going to get in trouble. Before we are sacked, finally, we're going to bid you a very, 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 very good night. See you in Kentucky Downs. Bye.
Cheers, guys.